Today we're confronting 3 knitting techniques I've been avoiding and finally decided that I have to confront them. So we're actually confronting Judy's Magic Cast On, the Provisional Cast On, and how to make bobbles so that they actually look good. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then stay around. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chiara, aka Crafty Chiara, and on this channel we talk about knitting, we talk about crocheting, I show you some techniques, and I make tutorials and I take you with me on my crafting journey. Go, we're doing it! I've been trying to avoid learning these 3 techniques because they seem so complicated for me to learn. But today we're confronting them, we're confronting it, and I hope that it is the same thing as it is with all the knitting methods I learned so far, that it seems more complicated than it is. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how these methods work, and then we're quickly going to talk if I'm actually going to keep using these methods, if it's been worth it. So let's get started. First up is the Judy's Magic Cast On. That is kind of a tongue twister. Judy's Magic Cast On. Judy's Magic Cast On. Now, I've been wanting to make the Elisabeth blouse by PetiteKnit for a while, and recently I've been looking at similar sweaters in like shops a lot, so I thought this is the time I need to finally learn how to do the Judy's Magic Cast On so that I can actually make this sweater. So it uses the Judy's Magic Cast On because the collar is kind of double knitted, but it's double knitted in the round. So it's actually going to be like hollow on the inside, and you're going to knit the front and the back in the round. And for that you need the Judy's Magic Cast On, because then you will kind of cast on 2 rows, like a front and a back row, and then in the middle it will be closed, so you don't have to like seam it together or sew it together. And so that's why I need to learn the Judy's Magic Cast On, and that's why you're going to learn it with me. So you're going to need knitting needles with a cable. So these are knitting needles with an 80 centimeter cable, but you could also get a longer one. In fact, I think it's even easier if you get some with a longer cable, kind of depending on how long your work is. And now we're actually going to cast on the stitches. Now you grab both your needles and you kind of put them together, and then you're going to go with your needles through the yarn in a way that the yarn strand goes over the upper needle and under the lower needle. And now we're going to actually start grabbing our yarn. So with the lower needle, we're always grabbing the yarn above and going like this. And with the upper needle, we're always going down and putting the yarn over like this. So again, above we're going like this, and below we're going like this over the needle. Above we're always going with the lower needle, we're going over the upper strand and pulling it through the middle, and below we're always going with the lower needle under the lower strand and pulling it over the upper needle. So this is kind of the motion here that we're doing, and you do this for however many stitches you need. Keep in mind that you're going to have to, if you need for instance 100 stitches in total, then you need 50 on this needle and 50 on this needle. And since we started, or kind of our first strand was one that went over the upper needle, you're going to have to end on one that kind of you grab with the lower needle. So if I continue like this, now I could actually end because I have an equal amount of stitches, but I'm going to be casting on a few stitches more to show you how to continue from here. So we are just going to continue in the same manner. Okay, so I've casted on a few stitches, not that many, but I'm only doing this to demonstrate this to you, so it's actually fine. So now we're actually going to start knitting, and we're going to be knitting the needle that was the lower needle. We're going to be knitting this one first. And from now on, it's actually just a magic loop method. So I'm going to be turning my work and pull out the now lower needle and make a loop. And you have a loop on this side and a loop on this side. We don't want the first stitch to untwist, so I'm actually going to be twisting the yarn tail around it once. And now I can grab the working yarn, and I'm going to be pulling the yarn tail down so that it doesn't unravel. And now I slide up the stitches And now you will just be knitting the stitches regularly. Do kind of hold this first stitch here in place a bit. You can then later also tug on it if it becomes a bit too loose, which it inevitably will, but now you will just be knitting magic loop, like a regular magic loop method. So I've knitted all of the first stitches now, and now I'm pulling up the second needle and pulling the first needle out. Again, regular magic loop method, and then pulling up the stitches here, getting my loop again so that I can continue the magic loop, and grabbing my working yarn here. And then on this first stitch, we always, as in magic loop, make sure that the gap isn't too loose, so knit it and then tug on it quite well up here so that it really isn't that loose, and then just continue knitting. Now I finished my first round, and now I'm back at my first stitch, grabbing, and now I finished my first round, and now I'm back at my first stitch, and I'm going to be sliding up my stitches again on the needle. Later, kind of this cast on edge will be on the inside, and from the outside there's just a very nice continuation of stitches. This is how you do the Judy's Magic Cast On and how you work it once you cast it on. The second new method we're going to try is how to make a provisional cast on. Now this cast on I actually need for a secret project that is in the making. I am designing myself and knitting a top, and I won't show that yet to you because I want to reveal it in a later video, but to actually kind of figure out how long to make certain parts, especially like here in the upper chest area, like in the bust area and the upper neck, to figure out how long to make it, I decided that I need to make a provisional cast on, because if you do a provisional cast on, then later you can actually pick up the stitches from the cast on seam without there actually being a seam. So you can just pull out the thread you got to kind of help you with the provisional cast on, and then take these stitches on your needles and continue, and there's going to be no seam or gap at all. So this is why I needed to learn how to make this, and here's how it goes. For this next one, you also need to get a crochet hook, because I'm showing you how to make a provisional cast on using a crochet hook. And I have a contrasting color to my later yarn, so this brown one is my contrasting color. And then I'm going to get my knitting needles ready and get my crochet hook, and first we're going to make a slip knot, a regular slip knot, and then inserting my crochet hook through the slip knot and tightening it. Now I'm already kind of grabbing my yarn, and now here comes my knitting needle into play. So I put it in between kind of my crochet hook and the working yarn up here. I put it in between, and then I'm going to just grab the yarn and pull it through. And now, because the yarn is in front, I'm going to be twisting it to the back again and grab it and pull it through. And again, put it around and grab it and pull it through. And just continue like this until you have as many stitches as you need. And once you have enough stitches, as many stitches as you wanted, I'm going to be cutting this yarn. So cut this here and pull it through. And now we're grabbing our regular new working yarn, the one that is actually going to be our final working yarn, and we will now just knit with this. So just continue as if we had already started knitting here. The first stitches are kind of still quite loose, so be careful here that you don't drop any stitches. Okay, so now back here you see that the stitch is really loose, so I'm going to kind of pull the thread here a bit so that it tightens up. And now you see that we have kind of our contrasting yarn knitted in here. So you're going to continue to knit for however many rows you need now. Okay, so I knitted a few rows and cast off this edge, and now we're at the point where I would want to pick this back up. So if you see here, I'm going to be recreating the loop I had here and I pulled out earlier on this side where kind of the open side of the stitch is. So if we look at the stitch like this as like these A shapes, then we will pick up our last stitch here at the open end of one of these A stitches. So I'm going to be pulling this part of the thread again through this stitch here. And you can get your knitting needles to help, or you can get your crochet hook to help. Since we already used the crochet hook, I'm going to grab my crochet hook to help me with this. And then I'm just going to be pulling through the strand. Now you want to be pulling through the strand, not the entire yarn, so just be careful here. And now we're going to pull the thread through here. And so you don't want to lose your stitches here, right? So what you're going to be doing, because that will actually help you not to lose your stitches, is pick up the yarn already with your needles now. So afterwards, when we have our stitches back on the needle, we're going to be actually holding them like this on the needle. So what you can do now is actually already grab always the front facing strand of each stitch here. So let me just do this right now. So grabbing the first front facing strand, and now looking at the next stitch, grabbing this front facing strand, looking at the next stitch, grabbing the front facing strand, next stitch, and so on until I have done this with all the stitches. So I grabbed the front strand of all the stitches, and now I can actually just go ahead and pull this out. Now if I did everything correct, it should come out entirely quite easily. Okay, so I will be just pulling this out now, and now I have all my stitches back on the needles, and I can actually just continue knitting here. And now you actually see it because I used a yarn that kind of self-stripes, so here you actually see where we switched. With every other yarn obviously you wouldn't see it as well, but looking at it from the stitch definition, you don't see any visible gap here. So yeah, this actually worked quite well, and I think I will be using this method again. It's really practical, especially for when you self-design tops and stuff, where you first want to kind of knit up and then decide on the length later. Then it's really useful. So yeah, good one. And the third thing is Bobbles. Now, if you've seen my video on 11 sweater and cardigan patterns for spring, I was talking about the fact that I'm knitting the Magnolia Bloom sweater, and there you need to make bubbles. And I first decided to make the bubbles according to pattern, which that method really doesn't work for me. They keep twisting on the inside, and they just, yeah, it just doesn't, they don't look good. And so I'm in a group on Ravelry where a group member recommended a different method to make bubbles. So we're actually going to try this out together and see if I actually think if it's better. So let's do it. I'm actually continuing with the swatch I made for the Provisional Cast On to show you the bubbles method that I learned from my friend on the knitting forum. I'm going to be knitting a few stitches in. Okay, so if this would be the stitch where I need to make the bubble in, I'm now first going to be knitting this stitch through the front loop, but not dropping it. And now we're actually going to go in through the stitch again from the back loop and pull out the loop. And now we're going to go knit through it again from the front loop, and this time I actually let it go. Now all the other bubbles methods that I learned so far will want me to make 2 more stitches into this one, and I had such a miserable time doing that. And so this method actually turns the work now and purls across these 3 newly made stitches. So I'm going to be purling these now. And now once we arrive at the end, we're going to be turning the work again and going to be knitting across the 3 of these again. And then we will be purling them another time. And now we're going to knit the first stitch, knit the next 2 together, and then pass the first knitted stitch over the knitted 2 together stitches. And now we just continue knitting normally. Now this first one after the bubble, you will want to pull very tight so that the bubble actually sticks out in the front, and then continue. Now at the end of the row, the bubble looks like this. So it's a few rows later, and I made another bubble, and so this is kind of how they look after a few rows. On this one, I actually knitted across it and purled back across it one more time. So I added actually 2 more rows to this one, which makes it bigger, and you can kind of vary the size of the bubbles quite easily this way. So yeah, that's how they work. And I do have to say, this method is so much more easy than the other method I used to struggle with, and they look very nice and well defined, and yeah, I definitely like this. The only thing to watch out for is that the stitch next to the bubble is really pulled tightly, but if you do that, I actually find this one is way easier than any other bubble method I've done so far. So yeah, 10 out of 10, can recommend. That's it. 3 new methods. That was an efficient day, wasn't it? So I hope you learned something from this video, or if not, that at least it was entertaining to you. If you like my videos, then please do leave a like and a comment down below, and subscribe, and also hit the bell icon to be notified whenever I post something new. If you really like it, then do consider becoming a patron. I actually, for the first time this week, had a poll going on which YouTube video I should make next, and this is the next YouTube video that will be coming, which was chosen by my first Crafty Champion patron, so the highest tier patron. And this is one of the 2 suggestions that my patron Mackenzie picked. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you want to kind of be able to do that as well next time, then do become a patron. I also already posted a lot of bonus content on there, like some helpful charts and sheets to help your knitting process. And coming up, there will be the final pattern for your first knitted sweater pattern, which I'm still working on, but is coming up. My Crafty Charmers, they get 1 free pattern per year. And the Crafty Champions, they get 3 free patterns per year. So go check it out. It's definitely worth it. And I would be so happy and grateful and excited if you decided to want to become a patron. Thanks to my patrons, Mackenzie and Laura. It means so much to me that you like my work this much, that you decided to become a patron. So thank you. Another video that is coming is how to make granny squares. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely subscribe and definitely hit the bell icon so that you'll get notified once these videos are up. Okay, so see you next week.